This video is about how you have an accent and you probably aren't even aware of it. Today we'll talk about the semantic accent, a very interesting concept that I came across in one of my linguistics classes, and I figured I'd just share it with you guys. In order to discuss what a semantic accent is, we first have to answer some other questions, and to be able to do that, we're gonna have to look at some of the core concepts of linguistics related to this field. Let's start by just defining what we mean when we say that someone has an accent. A quick Google search yields these results. And the first definition seems decently appropriate for this context. A distinctive way of pronouncing a language. This description of accent only includes a phonological accent, which is also what people are usually most familiar with. When we speak of an accent in a language, most people think of something like this, where you can hear a clear deviation from the standard pronunciation of the words in the sentence. And as the Google definition reads, especially one associated with a particular country, blah blah blah. But you can totally deviate from the standard language in other ways too, by, for example, using a word in a situation where a native speaker maybe wouldn't use that word, or by using words incorrectly because maybe the word is used differently in your native language. In English, for example, there is the word shade, which is usually used to describe a place or an area that is not hit by sunlight. And then there's also shadow, which is the little thing that follows you around as long as you are in the sunlight and not in the shade. In German, we don't have that distinction. We have one word for both of these concepts. As a German native speaker and a learner of English, this might lead me to use shadow in places where shade would be more appropriate and vice versa. And this can be considered accented language as well. It's just that it's not a phonological accent because of the sounds coming out of my mouth being incorrect, but a semantic accent because my word choice is non-standard. Okay, let me briefly explain what semantics is and talk on a slightly more abstract level about where the semantic accent comes from conceptually. I'll also give some examples, and in the end, I just want to share some of my own thoughts on this topic. Semantic is the branch of linguistics that concerns itself with the meaning, relations, and, not so important in this case, but good to know in general, truth of words and statements. First, it is important to understand that words have many meanings. Think, for example, of the word to run. You can run a marathon, you can run errands, but you can also run late. The word run is a collection of concepts. In other languages, however, these concepts might be represented by different words. If we take German, for example, there is a translation that would fit the basic concept of running, as in using your legs to move forward at a fast pace. That word is rennen, but in German we don't rennen marathons, we laufen them. Also, don't ask me about the difference between laufen and rennen. See how even though there's a one-to-one translation of the word for the basic concept of running, the other concepts attached to that word do not transfer at all into other languages. When you learn a second language, you're obviously not immediately aware of all of these nuances and use cases. Even worse, when you're just starting out, you most likely don't even have a direct connection between the word in your target language and the concept. The connection happens via the word in your native language. For example, if you see this, the process goes, oh, it has 4 legs, it's furry, it wiggles its tail, and it slobbers. That's a dog. What is the German word for that again? Ah, Hund. As you get better, things become a little more complex. First, you start to form a direct connection between the word in your target language and the mental concept, which helps you avoid doing a detour via your native language all the time. In the beginning, these connections are rather weak, but they will get stronger as time goes on. Then, eventually you realize that, as discussed earlier, many words might have a pretty solid translation, but their conceptual overlap might be pretty minimal. And you start building up a mental network of differences and similarities between words. For a two-word pair, that would look something like this, where there is some overlap, but there are also distinct features that may not be present in one or the other language. If we look at lemonade and the German translation Limonade, for example, we can see that in both languages they describe a cold drink that is usually somewhat sweet and includes some kind of citrus fruit. However, in German, lemonade can also be made from other fruit, and it is usually made with sparkling water. I obviously had to simplify a lot of things here, but it is important to note that this is an incredibly complex system with many layers and connections. And it is not only limited to words and their translations, it can also include things like grammar, for example. The English simple past is pretty common in everyday speech and is often used to retell events of the past. And even though we have the same tense in German, if you were to retell an event of the past using the simple past, you would sound like you're telling a fairy tale. Okay, now that we understand word meanings and mental representations, we can come back to the actual topic of this video, the semantic accent. A semantic accent is nothing more than using words in the wrong situation because of an unawareness of the concepts that may or may not be attached to those words. I found it really interesting to learn about this topic, both because I like this kind of stuff, but also because I think it makes yet another great argument for why it's so important to learn language in context. The more context you see a word in, the easier it will be to fine-tune its exact meaning and its underlying concept. I also understand though that it is really difficult to make definitive statements about the usage of words, so I won't be losing any sleep over all the words and their concepts that I have yet to learn. Because let's be real, in some cases even native speakers of the same language have a different understanding of the underlying concepts of words. That's why games like Codenames exist, and it's always fun discussing how other people see the connections between words. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Thank you for watching, and I can't wait to make more videos like this.